think we can underestimate the disruption that AI is going to create. I think we're all finally aware of how many jobs it's going to replace. And the reality is these are good paying jobs. These are white collar jobs. And we're going to leave it to those people that we eliminate to figure out their next chapter in their career. Well, what do you do when massive amounts of talent flood the marketplace and are now looking for these coveted jobs that are far fewer between? Most companies don't say, I just want more employees. Most companies are constantly trying to figure out how to be as efficient as possible less. So you're going to see companies massively shrink their headcount, really, truly, largely. And they'll be able to do, one person will be able to do the job that 10 people used to do.
Welcome to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I am Trent Cotton, your host and human capitalist. Ask yourself, is your HR organization future-proof? Well, we are going to dig into that very topic in this episode. In this podcast, we are going to tackle all of the topics that keep business owners and HR professionals up at night, from AI automation to transforming your workforce to meet the needs of the future. So if you have employees, you're going to want to follow along and take a lot of notes. So with that, buckle up, get ready. It's time to dig into this episode and transform you into a human capitalist. Let's go. All right, welcome back to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I have a guest on that whenever I saw her on Talent Connect, I was about halfway through listening and I shot her a LinkedIn email and I was like, love your content, love your thought process. I have to have you on. And JT, I have to tell you that out of all of the guests, your voice is still the one that's kind of like ringing in my head. So I can't wait to really kind of get in and unpack some of the statements that you have, because I don't think they give you enough time. So I want to give you an entire hour to talk about this stuff. And so I am not going to introduce you because you have got such a great career. Do you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I was in the staffing and recruiting industry, ran a $28 million division of staffing firm in the Silicon Valley, then came back to the East Coast and ran a $35 million division of a tech staffing firm in the greater Boston area before I hopped to the other side and became a coach. And the reason for that switch, there's a much longer story to it, but in my time in staffing, I saw a real unmet need, which was that we only get paid on the people we place, and so we're coaching people through the process to place them, but there's so many people that we meet that if we had coached them, they probably would have been more marketable. And so that's when I started to realize we had this real disconnect, and that job seekers needed access to resources to help them understand what was happening on our side. So when I got into career coaching, it was to really help them understand what recruiters are looking for, hiring managers, and how to just improve that process for themselves. I also just went back to the drawing board and realized, oh my gosh, nobody's teaching this, right? And so who was going to build this? And when I looked at my own career, I was known in my roles as the person you went to when you wanted to leave your job. You could tell me in confidence, I would help you find a new job, but then I knew I was going to need your backfill. And so leveraging that, I decided to become a career coach. Fast forward 2+ decades later. And, you know, it's been an amazing journey helping people earn more, stress less, love their work again. But I think it's a unique perspective because I do work with companies as well. So I get to see both sides and really try to bridge that gap. And that's been my mission ever since.
And it's funny because one of the, I can't remember the other two. This is awful, but I can't remember the other two. I just remember that they were leading like very large TA organizations, and you were like the voice of the candidate, which I thought was such, I mean, kudos to LinkedIn for putting it and structuring that way. I thought that was a very unique and needed way of presenting and kind of answering the questions. But to me, it was just very interesting because you could almost feel like your passion coming out of the screen whenever you're talking about the candidate experience.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I feel really honored that truly that LinkedIn was comfortable enough to let me take the stage with 1,800 plus global talent executives and talk from the job seeker. And it wasn't my intent to guilt or shame organizations, but more make them aware. I mean, these are huge leaders who are running huge operations that are understandably removed from the day-to-day. So you're not seeing what's happening on that side. You're just hearing the frustration of your talent team and continuously building things to help the talent team, maybe not realizing that what you're building isn't successful because it's not correctly serving the job seeker. And I think this is the thing that I'm trying to right now help companies understand, especially with AI. It's going to be really easy to adopt all sorts of AI stuff that is going to fail you. And you're going to think it's going to make your life easier. It's not, because it's not going to serve those job seekers correctly. So it was really great to be able to speak about that.
Well, and it's funny, my husband's in the job search, and he is, speaking with recruiters, and, he'll go through the interview process, and then it's like a week, that after he meets with the hiring manager. And, I told him this morning, I said, the frustrating thing for me about recruiters is they forget that employee experience begins with the hiring process. You botch that, it's an uphill battle for anyone on the HR side to create a very positive employee experience. And I know you've got some opinions on that. I've got a question about that later on to tee that up. So let's just kind of zoom out. The whole point of the podcast is I don't really take a traditional human resources approach to human resources. I always define it as we are in charge of the largest expense and the largest revenue producing asset in the organization, and all of our decisions kind of go through that lens. So if you take that approach, which I think you do, in the world of human capital, what do you see changing over the next 1, 5, 10 years, and why?
I don't think we can underestimate the disruption that AI is going to create. I think we're all finally aware of how many jobs it's going to replace. And the reality is these are good paying jobs. These are white collar jobs. And we're going to leave it to those people that we eliminate to figure out their next chapter in their career. Well, what do you do when massive amounts of talent flood the marketplace and are now looking for these coveted jobs that are far fewer between? So for example, I think you're going to see companies just be able to bring down their total headcount. Plain and simple. That everyone's going to contract their headcount. You said it yourself, it's the biggest expense and revenue center. It
is.
To have more control over that by having a smaller staff, most companies don't say, I just want more employees. Most companies are constantly trying to figure out how to be as efficient as possible with less. So you're going to see companies massively shrink their headcount. Really, truly, largely. And they'll be able to one person will be able to do the job that 10 people used to do. We're already seeing it with AI. It's infiltrating every area. So the amount of disruption that's about to happen is insane to me. And I think companies are going to have to start thinking right now about being truthful. Our headcount is going to reduce. That is what is going to happen. And we're going to have to really think strategically about who we need and then how to retain them, because those people will be very talented. They will be the people that know how to properly leverage AI, how to do the work of 10 people in a 40-hour work week. So we're going to need to rethink all of that. But there's going to be stages to that companies need to be aware of. And I think you and I see it in the headlines now. Companies are laying off and they're being honest. They're saying 20% reduction, AI is making it possible. But what we're not thinking about is how are we going to help those people figure out their next move? I don't see any employers talking about that. And I'll give you a great example. I don't have an exact stat, but the amount of companies that actually pay outplacement, provide outplacement services is way down. So people not listening, knowing outplacement rate, helping them find their next job, way down. Companies don't see that as their job anymore. But even still, outplacement's not going to be enough, especially in this market. I did a video yesterday on the pure data around trying to get a job in this market and how much harder it's getting. You have a 0.3 acceptance rate right now, 0.3 acceptance rate, 294 jobs. According to PathRise, they came out and said average has been 296 applications, something like that. And so it's a 0.3 acceptance rate, right? So think about that. And as many people commented on it, yeah, that's if there's 290 something jobs that fit me that I can apply to, because if I'm not an exact match, I'm not being considered. And so do the math. It's going to take people 9 months, 12 months, 18 months to find that next job at the level they were at previously. What are they doing in that interim? How is it messing with their psyche? So I paint this picture for talent executives because that's going to be, we call them your alumni. That is going to be the reality of the alumni, that you are inevitably going to lay off because you are going to shrink your business. And you have to start thinking about that now.
So if you were driving an HR organization with everything that you just said in mind, what would kind of be that tactical plan that you would be working on today to get your workforce and get the organization ready for kind of the human capital needs in the near future?
100%. Well, if you haven't already started, you do have some sort of project team that's been put together to start to really assess all the different AI tools that are coming at you, all the different ways that it can be utilized, and then thinking through its impact, right? It might save you a few hours here, but is it hurting you someplace else? And I think when everybody holistically starts to look at that, you can start to piece together an AI tech stack that will be very powerful for your company. So to do that, though, you have to decide how much human connection do we want to have? Where are those human connection points? Okay, and how are we going to make that happen? Now, let's wrap AI around it. So I think that is something we're going to see a lot of talent organizations do, hopefully, over the next year as this stuff just comes at them, right? And then, believe it or not, you're going to have somebody whose job is to constantly evaluate all the new tech coming in. Because the other amazing things about these technologies is that they're not big, clunky systems that once we invest in them, we have legacy tech. These are inexpensive, easy things to pop in and pop out. And that's exciting, right? But it means there's going to be somebody's full-time job is going to be constantly looking at tech that can be swapped out and integrated into that. So step one's there. As you do that, though, the company needs to be having a conversation about how are we going to handle our alumni? What do we want to create for our alumni? And, many years ago, I think about companies that before we had all this access to platforms that naturally created alumni opportunity, like LinkedIn, right? I remember there was a company called Lotus, and I'm really dating myself right now. And
You're not. I'm there with you.
It's so scary. But in Boston, the alumni of Lotus, one person said, I'm going to start a spreadsheet. And had like a spreadsheet of everybody that ever worked there and would give it out to other alumni when they left as a way to stay connected. What are companies doing now to stay in touch with their alumni, support their alumni? Those are the people that are talking nonstop about you as an employer. And it is a shocker to me that how many companies, the moment somebody's no longer with them, does not understand they are still an alumni, and they should be putting resource and branding towards that.
One of the lines that I remember that you said is that TA is about to go through a major shift that they aren't ready for. Is that kind of what you were hinting at? Is
100%.
Kind of this whole, I
They have
figured.
no idea what's coming. No idea. As someone who is privy to a lot of tech, so I get pitched multiple pieces of tech per day,
Same.
AI-based, right? You see it. And if you take a little time, I've dedicated time weekly to start to really look at these things to understand. I just don't think people understand how huge this is.
I mean, let's also face the fact that most of the time, whenever HR needs to cut, the first place they cut is TA. And for the life of me, I never understand that, because I would rather have more guarding the gate and less on the back end, because if the ones guarding the gate are doing their job, I'm not going to have as many employee relation issues, performance issues. I'm not going to have to stack the deck on the risk side of HR, but I don't know if the industry's ever really going to learn that lesson. We've seemed to just kind of bleed through it. But now, you already mentioned you have so many more applicants fighting for a job because there's so few jobs out there. But you've also got less recruiters, and the processes have not been updated. So it's just like this trifecta of, there's a really bad word that I want to say that really kind of describes it, but I think everybody probably knows what I'm thinking. How do we get out of that, in your opinion?
It's a great question. I think the first thing companies have to do is start to look at where the bottlenecks are in their process. So for every one company that says we struggle to find that exact right fit, we need that purple squirrel, we call that in the industry, right? They have a very different process than the high volume hire that's saying we just can't get enough applicants through the door, right? So that are a fit. So we look at that and we say, look at the entire cycle. Great way to look at it this way, if all my marketing people are out there, when you're looking to improve marketing and conversion, you go through and say, where's our bottleneck? Are we having trouble getting leads? Nope, that's not our bottleneck. But are we having trouble getting people to convert? Okay, maybe that's our bottleneck. Are we having trouble with customers staying? Maybe that's our bottleneck, right? And so I don't think organizations are stepping back enough and looking at the process. The other thing that they're guilty of, marketers are guilty of this too, but TA in particular, they like to stick with what feels good and feels successful. So instead of addressing the bottleneck, what do? They keep working on the good thing to try to make it better. that's marginally going to give you the results you're looking for. Whether you like it or not, you need to rip the Band-Aid off, look at the broken thing, and put all your time and resource into understanding that. And so with all of this AI that's coming on and the things that it can actually do, there are going to be some pretty cool solutions to help you with these things that historically you've probably just always given up on trying to fix,
Right.
and that piece will be cool. And let me give you an example.
Okay.
You know those people that we want, the bilingual brain surgeon at $10 an hour. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
Not
I do.
easy to find. And traditionally, what have we utilized? Data in the form of a resume or an online application, a profile. But the problem is garbage in, garbage out, or fake, and so that has always been an issue. Authentication is going to be the secret weapon in this. And the ability to have conversation, virtual conversation with people who on paper may not look the part, but in talking to them, you are able to validate, authenticate, get the evidence that they could in fact do this job, right? We all know what I'm talking about, that candidate. Well, until now, the only way to do that was to what? Talk to them. But now
Right.
you're talking about AI that's going to be able to chat with them virtually and very human-like, and gather all that and say, gee, this non-traditional candidate on paper actually is a fit for this role. And because they're non-traditional, is in the price point that we're looking for. So I see some really exciting things coming down the pike in terms of being able to get the right talent for you that has, that very unique skill set in an extremely cost-effective way.
I'm in HR because someone took that approach. They looked, I was a banker, I managed sales teams, I managed large organizations and just wanted to do a change. And I had, shout out to Maggie Loriano. She took a chance on me 20 years ago and said, you've got something that I can't teach. You know the business side. You can talk the language. You can establish credibility, and you know what it's like to manage a portfolio. I just want you to do it with talent. And I'm so thankful for her because, one, I've found an industry that I love. I don't know if it loves me as much as I love it, but, I am excited that there are going to be that upper echelon of companies that are going to be forced to say, how do we do something different? Because we can't fight for the same talent. And you kind of did a little bit of a flyby, but I want you to go right in on something else that you said that I was so excited to hear you say at Talent Connect is the death of the resume.
Yeah.
Just unpack it. I'm not even going to lead you into the question. Just unpack it.
And so when people hear me say that the death of the resume is coming in 2 years, not 10, and I'm here for it, they roll their eyes and they say, we've been saying that for a while. But the truth is it really has. And I offer this up to people. I said there was a time where we didn't even have resumes until we needed one, right? You needed a way to document your experience. Then that wasn't enough anymore. We needed to know you could communicate. We had a cover letter, right? Then that wasn't enough anymore. Now you needed to be able to fill out an online application. That wasn't enough anymore. You needed a LinkedIn profile. And so we know the evolution is coming. The problem with all of those is they're text-based and they are only defining you by what you've done. And you have to make sure that you are putting the right things on there for the other side to find you. So it becomes a big game of telephone, and this is why we have so much dysfunction in recruiting, right? That telephone game where the translation, lost in translation, okay? Resumes will die because if a picture is worth 1,000 words, we all know what that means, right? I can see a picture, interpret so much more than the written word, then video is worth 1,000,000. And video is going to be the way that we authenticate and get the evidence that somebody is who they say they are. And this is what's going to transform and speed up the process. Right now, garbage in, garbage out with resumes. People are using AI resume tools to literally match themselves to job descriptions, even if it creates lies, to get through the system, right? We can't have that anymore. The way we've always, so what happens when you do that, right, is you now get on the phone with somebody who look like a perfect match on paper, you interview them and you figure out, oh, they don't even know what they're talking about. What we have to do is kill the resume and create the first interview. But we do that virtually with AI in the form of video. And so we're already seeing some of that with asynchronous video, companies that send you a link, you open it up and you record. The problem is job seekers hate that, and for good reason. They have no control over what they're sharing with you, and they have no idea where that video is going, which is their property. If you think about it, that's their likeness.
It is.
So this is one of those examples when we started in the beginning where I said, this is something you give to the job seeker. If you really want to get this right and get the right stuff, allow the job seeker to control the video process and share with you themselves on video authenticating themselves, sharing things that you need to hear. This will be one of the biggest game changers we see. There's so much incredible tech out there. I talked about one that I actually advised, full disclosure, but it was only after a year and a half of watching that I was like, they get it. McCoy's a mobile app. It's free. You download it. Job seeker records themselves, sends it to you. You look at it. Boom. You're like, first interview done. Let's go.
Yep.
These are the things that are going to start happening really quickly here, so that you'll want to pay attention to. But again, mindful of what you should own and what the job seeker should own.
And it's interesting. You've also got the capability for some inference on soft skills as well with AI, which I've seen a couple over the last couple of weeks. I'm like you. Anytime there's someone that's got AI, I mean, my day job is the VP of Talent and Culture for an AI company, so naturally I gravitate toward tech. But I had one vendor that was like, yeah, we can actually give you an assessment of their soft skills, and we validate their confidence level in their answer, and we assign it like a 1 out of 10 confidence level. And I say, okay, I need to understand that, because there's part of me that's the risk side of going, okay, I'm not the most expressive person unless I'm on camera. Like, how does that work? And they were talking about word count. They were talking about the inflection of someone's voice, how quickly they answer the question versus how long they take to think. What are the dramatic pauses? And it was so funny, JT. I was like, well, I do that. Like, whenever I'm listening to someone, I know, like, even now, I know the subjects that you are most excited about because you're leaning into the camera. You're using a lot more hand motions. So if we can do that, why in the world couldn't AI? So I agree with you. And I think it's going to be interesting too, to tack on to what you're saying, adding some blockchain to the verification process. I don't have to call and do a background. There should be something in there that immediately just goes and validates, say, yeah, they graduated from this college. Yes, they worked at this thing. Okay, fantastic. Background done. So I love that. I can't wait. So are there any kind of text that you're watching that's going to help facilitate this? Murder is kind of the bad thing, the death of the resume. Let's keep it nice and easy.
My money is on anything that allows for conversational AI. So anything that allows the job seeker to relax and just share is going to get you the most authentic information out of that job seeker, capture it, interpret it. And we're seeing unbelievable growth in that area. The company that wins is the company that builds a new large language model. And I think a lot of people don't understand that about AI. So let's look, for example, at LinkedIn. LinkedIn has 1.1 billion users. They have an incredible amount of data on these individuals. That would be a large language model. They call it the economic graph. But they admittedly know that a lot of that data is false or outdated. People aren't constantly updating it. And so they will have to build AI tools that get people to come back and do what? Talk on a regular basis. Now, brilliantly, they're already doing that in the form of their video tab. For those people that don't know, it's in beta. It should come out pretty soon. There will be a very TikTok-style video tab in LinkedIn where people are talking about work, career, industry, that stuff, right? No dancing. It really will be right. But imagine that. Those individuals, that algorithm can listen to them and know what they know a lot about, right? Gravitas, depth of knowledge. And then say, okay, that's someone we should put in front of you. You're looking for somebody with that knowledge. They've had 5 videos where they've talked about that. Clearly there's somebody, and they've done that in the last 30 days. Current knowledge, depth of knowledge to the top of your search results. That's exciting. But other companies will build large language models from scratch. To some degree, it's like having technical debt. If you have an existing data set like LinkedIn does, what are they having to do? Try to scrub it and fix it. Other organizations could very quickly adopt a large language model and collect all new data that could then be utilized, which is pretty exciting. So I think, we're going to see that in the next year. You're going to see some winners come out that are capturing that and we'll be able to use it.
Yeah, and it's funny, whenever LinkedIn not too long ago did that whole announcement, or I don't just remember there was this big rage about, for the longest time they were trying to get a lot of us that were top voices or, had large followers to go and do contributions.
Yes.
And, I did it for a while because I'm competitive. I want to keep my badge. And then finally I was just like, I'm tired. I'm not doing 5 of these a day. I've got, a real job to kind of work through. But then, some months later they came back and they said, we've developed our AI thing and it can answer questions. And guess where it came from? The contributions of people from its audience. I mean, I can't fault them for it. They'd be stupid not to use their audience, just like you were saying. They're sitting on gold mine. One other thing, let's shift, because, we've talked about AI impacting the workforce. You've kind of given a vision of, if I were to say, JT, you're now head of HR for my organization, you gave some great tactical advice as to what to do. There was something else that you talked about that I thought was really interesting. It was about Gen Z coming into the workforce. You said that you believe that coaching for Gen Z is going to be critical and also expected.
Yeah,
so
100%.
Can you unpack that a little bit? What are you seeing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Gen Z was raised on coaching. Their whole lives, organized sports, organized activities. They see coaching as a path to greatness. That's how it's been sent to them. Older generations, it's a sign of weakness, right? I need to go get some coaching in my career. Something's wrong with me. Gen Z doesn't see it that way. They're looking at you and saying, I'm here. You want me to deliver or provide return on investment. Coach me. That is the expectation. They're also not afraid of investing in coaching outside of you. So not only do they expect you to do coaching, but you're going to see them just do it for the sake of, I'm a business of one. Right? They don't see themselves as employees. They don't have golden handcuffs. They see themselves as partners with you. And so the moment the partnership doesn't work anymore, they'll try to make it work, but if not, they'll move on. And they know how to do that because guess what? They know how to go get coaching outside of the organization. So this goes back to the reason that I got into coaching was you had a lot of people who said, well, the only coaching I get is from my manager. Right. And the only coaching your manager is going to give you is to do what they need you to do in the moment until they don't, until things change and you get laid off and you're shocked and you're saying, I was doing a great job. Sure, for whatever the manager was telling you, but did you step back and look at your career? Did you see the writing on the wall? Did you take ownership? That's where I see Gen Z. They've already been taught that they are a business of one, they are a partner, and it is 100% their responsibility to drive their own career. So they'll take whatever coaching they can get in the workplace, but they're happy to get it outside of the workplace as well.
So what do you think are the implications, again, putting you back into head of human capital for an organization, knowing that, what are you going to start doing to make sure that you're ready for Gen Z? Right.
So stop trying to ask them to do annual reviews and career planning 5 years out. It's not how they operate, and nor should they, because look what's happening now. In a span of a year, a job description will change so dramatically. They get that, and if you act like you don't, then you look antiquated. So it's a very agile process with them, where you're collecting feedback on a pretty regular basis. Check-ins, again, that all can be to some degree automated, right? There's going to be really cool AI tools that will allow for that interactive coaching to see where their head's at, and to provide that feedback in a way that they feel comfortable sharing. So much more coaching will be done interactively. More opportunities for them to build their skill sets even outside of the workplace will be a big part of it. But most importantly, stop thinking you're going to get that person to stay with you 5 or 10 years. This idea of focusing so hard on retention, if you really know that your return on investment comes 6 months after the hire, and that you're going to need them for a year and a half or a 2-year stint, start getting honest about that. They actually respect that more. For you to say to them, look, we need you to stick it out 6 months. You're not even profitable to us in 6 months. The next 18 months, build incentive plans around that. Be transparent around that. They are that smart. They are that sophisticated. Start now. Treat them like a business partner. You would do that with a business partner. Why aren't you doing that with your employees? Gen Z will expect it.
So almost treat them almost like a little bit of a longer term gig worker.
100%.
Is kind of the mindset. Okay.
Every job's temporary. Every job's temporary, right? And what we teach at Work It Daily is you are a business of one. You're not an employee. You are in business for yourself, but you should never be in business by yourself. Your employer, your customer, has an entire team, a board of directors, advisors that all work together in the best interests of the company. You should not be trying to do this yourself. So that's where you're going to see Gen Z really bring it together. You're going to watch incredible things happen. They get that. All right. And so you're going to see them say, okay, how do I get my board of advisors? What are the resources that I have so that I can make sure that this is a fair and equitable partnership?
Early in my career, I was very blessed. I had 2 fantastic leaders. One of them was an Irish priest, because I did youth ministry for a little while. And I think that he taught me more about leading than just about any other person that I've had. There was an older banker too that coached me. And it was funny, the first time that I met him, whenever they transferred me over, he called me in, we had our one-on-one, and he asked me a question that this was 90 something, let's just leave it at that, 90 something, whenever I was having this meeting. God, this is why Botox reminder. All right. But, one of the things that he said, okay, I am renting you from your future for the next 2 years. What do I need to do to get you to that next step? Whenever you leave me, what are you going to leave me for? And I didn't really know how to answer. I mean, this was not a very common mindset, back in 97, 98, 99, whatever it was. So it kind of took me aback, but it said a lot about his leadership, because he was constantly pushing me outside of my comfort zone. And I learned so much in the year that I worked for him that his name was Hosea Butler. I still hear his voice in my head, with the lessons that he was able to embark. But that was his mindset of, I know you're going to leave, but what can I do to help maximize you and get you ready for that next move? I think that's a wake-up call, at least for me. I know as a leader I need to start having those conversations and being a lot more transparent.
What happens is we train somebody and we think, oh gosh, that was so much work. So if I can just get them to stay as long as possible, because I don't want to do all that work again. That's the wrong mindset. That is totally. Absolutely the wrong mindset. If you build the job correctly, there shouldn't be that much coaching to do on the front end for you to need to then hang on to it. There is a whole different way of looking at this and building your models so that you're encouraging people to cycle through, because you're bringing the next person in. There's always that sweet spot in the development phase, right? That's what we need to be thinking about. And that's what he had the vision of understanding. Right? And see what I'm saying? And so he never worried about getting more talent behind you. He understood to build it this way and knows that you're going to go out and tell 100 people about that experience. You just did it on a podcast. You just told tens of thousands of people, right? That is what we have to be thinking about going forward, because the way we're going to cycle through people, your alumni base is going to be bigger than you've ever had. Your alumni organization of ex-employees is going to grow so fast and be so much bigger than it was, 10 years ago. That's what I think people aren't thinking about, and how you lead will impact that.
It will, and there's something to be said too with the AI. We're looking at onboarding, we're looking at how it's in recruiting and interviewing. You mentioned something about the onboarding of an employee. I saw a crazy stat from Gallup that said that by, I think it was either 2027 or 2030. I've seen a lot, but those are kind of two big years that everybody's looking at for some crazy reason. But 65% of employees will expect to have interacted more with AI on the front end of the job than currently. And like 65%, I mean, that's close to 3/4 of your employee base is going to expect that their first level 1, level 2 needs whenever it comes to recruiting and or interacting with someone in human capital is going to be done through AI, and they welcome it. And I said this at a recruiting conference not too long ago, and I immediately got a question after that and said, well, that can't be true. They're still going to value the human connection. And I was a little bit of a jerk. I said, so how many candidates, if I were to look through your calendar and through your ATS over the last 2 weeks, are still waiting for you to follow up with them on a job? And AI would do that immediately. I could ping an AI and go, where do I stand on this? Oh, they declined me. Cool, I can move on. You know? So
we talked about that at the conference. I said, tell them it's AI. They understand the value. They'd still rather AI speak to them than get no answer at all. You nailed it. Such a great comment on your part is, again, the candidate experience being left unread is the equivalent to ghosting. And now I'm going to tell 17 of my friends what a lousy experience I had with your company. And I get that in different times companies don't care, but you have to. They are your consumers. They are your advocates. They are your alumni.
I saw another crazy statistic that 67% of consumers will actually go and look at what employees say about the company before they buy a product. 60. I mean, that I was expecting some. I mean, I do that a little bit, but I just figure I'm weird. I'm in human capital. Of course, I'm going to do that. But to think that many people actually go and value what the employees are saying, why wouldn't you want them to kind of be your brand ambassadors?
I'd love to see that number really quick by generation, because 67's the average,
yeah.
but I bet it's
Yeah.
way higher with Gen Z. They've been trained.
I
to look
didn't
at
even
that.
think about that. That makes sense. That would be why it's skewed, because I'm still thinking of kind of the generation of 7 or 8 years ago, going that can't be 67. But throw in Gen Z, and even like my daughter's age, she's 21. Some of the stuff that she does between her and my husband's 13 years younger than me, if it requires research and stuff, I send it to the two of them. It's like, this is what I'm thinking about buying. You go read the product review. So I'm thankful Amazon put that little AI summary. Here's what people are saying, because it saves me a lot of time.
And I'll just say this, building on what you're saying, we, now that we have access to all this information, you feel obligated to research. Think about it. You buy anything that's expensive, you research the heck out of it because you can. And you would feel silly not researching it and just buying it and hoping for the best. Shame on you if it doesn't work out. How can we think any different if Gen Z expects to partner with you? It's just natural. They're going to research the heck out of you.
Absolutely. And you need to have the right content out there, because they will see through bullshit quick.
Big time. You need a lot of content too. That's something we can get deep into, and not heavily produced. I need a lot of authentic, original content in volumes, because they understand that if they see a lot currently, they know you're real. Otherwise, something heavily produced, they don't trust.
And it's so easy, if you have the right culture, to give your employee the mic.
Yep.
No one can tell the brand story better than they can.
That's
They're
so
living
true.
it,
So true.
I had one of my recruiting BFFs. She runs a very large recruiting organization for a food distributor, and she was telling the story about how they started doing a lot more local recruitment marketing, because they have these big warehouses, and so they would just do almost like mobile tours, like here's the freezer, and here's what we do, and here's this, and and that was part of the job thing. So day one of this person getting hired, they're like, all right, we're going to go to the main freezer, and the person goes and takes a right and knows exactly where they're going, and the manager goes, how do you know that? Yeah, I saw it on the video. It was just, it was such a neat story. And she said that's whenever they knew that they had something, they just doubled down on it. And it really increased the quality of the new hires, and their retention stayed because, like you said, they research and they were validated in their purchase.
Love it. Love it.
So last topic, you also got into, I think a lot of companies are saying, let's just drop AI in recruiting or anywhere in human capital, and it'll be fine. But you actually kind of cautioned against that in Talent Connect, saying that it can actually do more damage if it's not done correctly. Can you give some advice there?
Yeah, and so we look at it now. For example, AI can generate a list of people that meet a certain set of criteria for you, customize the email outreach, send that email out to them saying, hey, we think you're a match for this role. If you are interested, send your availability for an interview and your resume, right? Well, what you don't understand is that job seeker is dropping everything in that moment to do that. They think you've looked at their profile, that you truly have evaluated them, and that by sending it back, they're going to get an interview. That is exactly how they've interpreted that. So,
yeah, rightfully so.
Right? And so when they then see that somebody's looked at their profile, for example, on LinkedIn, it notifies, and they don't get messaged, they feel ghosted. Now, in reality, we know that that was the first time a human looked at it and decided they weren't a fit. And so it's things like that the number one thing you're going to need to pay extra attention to the moment you start implementing AI is communication, because you are going to have to make sure that what you're saying through AI is being properly interpreted. And that's just, one example. I gave another example at the process where imagine an automated AI recruiter interviewing you and saying, hey, you sound like you answered everything correctly. I'm going to forward you on to the hiring manager. That talent just heard they're getting an interview with the hiring manager. That's not true. 20 people could be forwarded on, and that hiring manager might choose 5. So what you have the AI saying will matter so much, and you cannot sleep on that. You're going to want to test it. You're going to want to send something and have 10 job seekers say, what did you just hear? Tell us what you just interpreted. Make sure that you are over communicating, that it's AI, that you're saying what you're meaning, and that you're actually getting that right result, because that's where you're going to see this breakdown. Companies are going to sit and brag next year about how many people hours they saved and how much cost reduction there was by automating, and not understanding on the back end what they've actually cost themselves in the long run in reputation. And so be aware, folks. Be very aware. Communication's key.
So it sounds like almost as if you're advising people to almost manage your AI like you would an employee.
Yes.
If it's an HR
Yes.
person or one of my line managers or whatever, I'm going to go and say, hey, let's look at this email. I think you probably could have done it a little bit differently. Is that kind of what you're suggesting?
You absolutely. AI is not a set it and forget it situation. Here's another great example. When social media came out, what did everybody do? They gave it to the most junior person, right? Instead of stepping back and thinking about the brand. Please, your answers.
I forgot all about that.
But this is what people are going to do with AI. Oh, well, who's interested in AI? Give it to the new person. The young people, they'll be tech savvy. They don't have the institutional knowledge to build the right thing. You cannot do that. The senior most people that have the best understanding of candidate experience, attraction, all the things you're trying to make happen, and the communication that goes into it needs to be involved in this, and you need to watch it regularly. Really regularly. So I love that you brought that up.
Do you think that there may in the future be a job called like an AI manager by department?
Oh, absolutely. Every single department will have AI and will therefore need somebody who's responsible, like I said earlier, evaluating the tech, swapping the tech out, making sure the tech is doing as intended. You will have to have that. You'll have to watch it carefully. It's amazing.
It's almost I like Marvel. So on Black Panther, his sister is like the tech whiz that manages everything and does everything. And in my mind, when you were describing this person, I'm thinking that's who we need in every department that knows all these different tools and is kind of like the representative or liaison between the two of them. That's fascinating.
I'll tell you, anyone listening to this today, like people here, you work for AI, so I know you're nerded out on it, but a lot of people are like, I'm just going to ignore it till it becomes so basic and understood by everybody else they can teach it to me. I've literally had people say that to me. Like, I'll just wait till everybody else can teach it to me. I'm going to be really aggressive here and say you're putting your job at risk. You're literally, because the people that get it before you are the ones that are going to be able to prove their value, and everyone's going to look at you and wonder what you do. Now, you have that institutional knowledge, so that's helpful, but if you don't want to learn and understand AI, you should really be worried, because very quickly, we've all seen what happens when somebody becomes outdated, right? That's going to happen to people in months, not years, in months with AI.
Yes.
So the advice I've been giving everyone is go grab ChatGPT and have a conversation with it. Don't ask it to do something. That was the first thing everybody did was, prompt engineers, do this, do that. Go have a conversation with it. That will immediately make you understand what a big deal this is. Because it's crazy how it can have a conversation with you, and people aren't using it for that. And when I tell people to do that and they come back, they're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, just to have that third person point of view of going, hey, this is what I'm thinking, shoot holes in it. And, okay, well, why did you bring that particular point on? Are there any stats to support that? I want cited stats from this library or this journal. And it goes and it pulls that stuff in just complete record time. I was sharing with somebody last night that I was doing, I love analytics. Minor was statistics and finance, so I'm a numbers guy, I always have been. And I was doing something for our yearly planning. And I had this massive spreadsheet, and I'm sitting there and I'm creating all these beautiful formulas. And I kid you not, JT, about 10 minutes into it, I go, what the hell am I doing?
Yep.
I downloaded that thing, threw it into Gemini, and said, tell me this, and create a chart. Less than 10 seconds, just bam.
It's just training our brain to remember that it's there, right? It was like learning to use the internet and Google and search engines, right?
Yes.
And now I do that 100 times a day, I feel like. I'll just... Same thing. It's just a matter of time that we train ourselves.
Well, let's go into rapid fire, because I feel like I could talk to you for an hour about stuff. So rapid fire questions. First one is, what is a book that changed your perspective on business and or HR?
Punished by Rewards. The Problem with A's, Praise, and Other Bribes. It was built by Alfie Kohn. It was written over 60 years ago, and his predictions were deadly accurate. That we built incentivized models for people like the carrot external that created a massive amount of dissatisfaction, because anything that is truly satisfying comes from intrinsic motivation, right? Self-motivation. Okay. And then we ended up building an entire benefits and culture and work model based on extrinsic, which means people get the dopamine hit and the satisfaction for a hot second, and then they're unhappy again. That to me was a game changer, and one of the things that got me into career coaching.
of it. So do you have a favorite podcast or series that you listen to that's industry specific?
I think obviously I sit and regularly listen to Chad and Cheese, and I've been lucky enough to be a guest on there a couple of times. What I
Same.
like about that is every Friday morning, it's just kind of giving me an understanding of what's happening. For me right now, I listen to a lot more podcasts around business just because I'm in the middle of scaling the business, so again, the power of AI. And so I've been listening to things like Alex Hermosi's podcast, which is pretty interesting. He's documenting his entire journey of wanting to become a billionaire, and he's taking you through every phase of it. I think it's been pretty interesting to see his document. Again, I'm a fan of people using content to document their journey. I think that's how we learn best. So
I love that.
it's called The Game. His podcast
things.
is called The Game.
The Game?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to go and check it out. So where can people find and engage with you? Because I'm quite sure that people are going to be drawn to you like I was on Talent Connect.
So social media wise, obviously I'm on all the platforms, so you can easily, ask me to connect on LinkedIn. Just mention that you heard this episode. That way I'll know to connect with you. I also have TikTok, but it's a little harder to connect me with me there, but if you're listening. And then obviously Work It Daily is the website. Which, by the way, people often ask, why is it called Work It Daily? And I'll just tell you that I built a method called the GLOW method, which stands for Gain Perspective, Illuminate the Goal, Own Your Actions, Work It Daily. And that's the methodology we use in coaching. That last step is the hardest, right? The consistency is key, so hence the name. But if you head over to Work It Daily, you can connect with me there.
Love it. All right. So here's your mic drop moment. What is a one-liner that will stick with someone listening to this that will give them some action items based on all of the fun topics that we talked about today?
The future is video, whether you like it or not. Everyone is going to have to document their knowledge. It's not open for discussion. The sooner you start turning on a camera and talking about what you know, it's not you being a guru, it's not even you being a top voice. It is the new resume. So get over yourself and start recording.
Love it. All right. Well, JT, thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've learned so much from all of this. So, audience, I'm going to put all of her information down in the show notes, so definitely go and connect and follow. She is one of the few people that I turn the bell on LinkedIn because I want to be one of the first to know whenever she posts something. It's just that good. So, JT, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
And that is a wrap on another episode of The Human Capitalist. Thank you so much for choosing to tune in and invest your time with me today. I hope that you walked away with some valuable insights and actionable strategies that you can maximize your greatest asset, and that's you. But hey, before you go, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that way you can stay in the know. The Human Capitalist movement begins with you. If you have some feedback, feel free to leave it. I'll read every comment. I want to make sure that the content that I am delivering is what you want to hear. If you want to connect further, you can find me at my link down below. I'd love to hear from you and continue this awesome conversation. Well, this is Trent Cotton, your human capitalist, and I'm going to sign off. But remember, invest in yourself, own your potential, and keep building your human capital.